My name is Arpan DeAngelo, A-R-P-A-N, D-E, capital A-N-G-E-L-O. And I'm a student of Sri-Chinmoy's. I started running with his inspiration back in 1972. I was a gymnast. I didn't like running. I didn't understand running in terms of, long distance. To me, running was always for the track guys at the high school or whatever, college. And so I started running, a mile. I could do a mile. And then once a month I did a 3-mile run. And so self-transcendence, which is our main philosophy, is that, you develop your capacity slowly and see, what you can do in any field. It doesn't have to be running. And so without any real program, I started getting, more and more excited about long distance running. I eventually graduated to the marathon, and then beyond that, started running ultras in 1978. And then I think my first multi-day, I did a 24-hour race in 1981, and then I did a 1,000-mile race in 1991. So it took me quite a few years of running before I wanted to do a multi-day. I loved ultras, but 24 hours was my limit. But then I got into multi-day, and that was a whole different ballgame. And there was something really challenging about it and painful about it, because sometimes you can't avoid some of the things the body goes through. But at the same time, in my mind, in my consciousness, it was very, very fulfilling. It was a way to, really go beyond what you think your mind can handle and the body can handle. But we do it carefully. We don't. When you do a multi-day with our team, you have to qualify for it. You have to, have some past experiences. And for me, I took it carefully. I didn't do that many every year. I did the 1,000-mile race. I waited for many years, and I did the 6-day race, 10-day race, 700-mile race, and a number of 6-day races. And then I was actually and then by that time in 1996, we had the 2,700-mile race, which was the first race around that block. It was 2,700 miles. And then it was Sri-Chinmoy's idea. And I went to help. As a matter of fact, I invited Ted Corbitt, who's, who is. And I interviewed him there for like an hour on tape. And then I went to transcribe the cassette tape. It wasn't a movie, it wasn't a video, I didn't have a video. And they lost it, so that interview is gone. But, we've known Ted for many years, and he came to all our races, and he even walked some of them. He was walking for his last 20 years. And so anyway, that inspired me to be at that race, but I never thought of running it. And although I was qualified to run it, I think it was fear. Fear keeps us from doing a lot of things that we think that we want to do, but we're afraid of either failure or whatever, or loss. Anyway, so for many years I didn't run the race, but I went there every day, and I worked on medical. I even did some photo blogs, some photo galleries, for a few years, and knew all the runners and helped them. And then one year in 2003, Sri-Chinmoy said to me personally, "I feel that you can do the 3,100-mile race. Is your mind a problem?" And he didn't tell me, that my mind was a problem. He asked me. He said it in a very polite way, and he knew that I had fear. I mean, he could see everything that you're feeling, and in a very nice way, he wanted to inspire me, because he knew in my heart, because I had written a really nice poem on the 3,100. I'll have to give it to you, a few years earlier. And I think when he saw that poem, he knew already that I wanted to do it, but I was really afraid of it. I mean, when you think about it, it's very daunting, that race, intimidating, But I wanted to do it, and he's the only one that knew, And so he encouraged me, and he said, "Well, train." I told him my knee was hurting. I wasn't doing a lot of long distance training up to that point, and he said, "Well, train next year. I don't want you to get injured." So I trained for 2004, and I did it with a lot of difficulty. I had shin splints. I had to walk for 8 days during the race. But I learned how to walk efficiently and get in, not minimal miles, but just under, like maybe in the 50s miles. And he inspired me to stay in the race and just be happy. He said, just be happy. That's the main thing. I think anything in life, to get through all the difficulties, life is not simple. There's a lot of difficulties in surviving. That you have to find happiness, even in the bad things that happen, things that are disappointing. And I learned in that race, just for my life itself, that if you find the source of happiness, which is really inside you, and you carry that with you, even through the hard times, if you know how to kind of access that source, then you can get through very difficult things, including failures, or injury, in this case, injuries or pain. And so I did what he said. I just stayed in the race, and I learned how to walk efficiently, and I tried to stay happy. Music and chanting and different things. I go on and on and tell you what I learned, but I finished on the last day, and I was the first person over 50 ever to finish the race. I was 52. It was in 2004. And so I'm 67 now. I don't think I'm going to do it. Well, I'll be 67 in 3 days, actually. And but I still run my age on my birthday, and I'm still doing that. I call it my age-a-thon. So I'm going up to Ottawa to run the 24-hour race we put on up there. I'll just run and walk and take it easy and just do 67 miles. As long as I'm healthy enough, I could do my age, It doesn't have to be fast. It's just moving. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I've run about 350 marathons and ultra marathons. And I used to, and when I race, I push myself. I race, but I race against myself. I can't do any PRs anymore. But for my age, I could probably compete. I compete quite well with over 60-year-olds. But
what do you think you were most afraid of the 3100 when you were thinking about doing it?
I was just afraid of the length and the amount of focus and maybe some of the pain, I don't know. It's very difficult because fear is very confusing. You don't know why we fear, maybe fear of failure or fear of not being comfortable, or you're like you're going out of your comfort zone, or you just feel inferior. Sometimes we have these psychological complexes like inferiority or superiority. And Sri-Chinmoy wanted us to transcend these. He wanted us, we have to love ourselves. We can't feel like we're inferior to someone, and then we kind of we're not happy with ourselves. But at the same time, we can't feel the sense of superiority because I'm a better runner, or I'm a better rider. But there's always somebody better than you. So you can either use this relative kind of comparison or not compare yourself at all with others and don't judge others, but find your own value for yourself within yourself, because you're an individual. At the same time, when you meditate, you go beyond any mental concepts of judgment of other people, and our goal is oneness, the sense of oneness. You hear, oh, we're all one. We're all one on a certain level of reality. If you stay in this kind of mental reality, you don't see that. It's all separation. With the ego, there's a lot of separation. And that's why people either hurt each other or hate each other, or there's a lot of, disharmony. And so we believe in peace and harmony, but it's not just an outer peace. It has to come from inside. It's a higher reality. And that higher reality has to be cultivated through, we feel, spiritual discipline. Meditation helps a lot. And prayer is also good, but with prayer, you're still using mental kind of thoughts. With meditation, you're trying to go beyond any expectation or thoughts and feel the reality that is the basis of peace and the basis of love and harmony and oneness. And if we don't have it in our, let's say, you could say it's like a bank account. And in the morning, you meditate, you try to put a little bit of this peace or whatever quality you need for that day. inside your bank account. And then during the day when you need to use it, you know, you can write a check and it won't bounce, you know. But if it's not in there, it's going to bounce. So in other words, you know, somebody's going to make you mad and you can't control your anger because you don't have enough peace inside. If you meditate, you could be putting money in your spiritual bank. It's kind of like that kind of, you know, comparison.
When was the first time that you met Al that you remember?
I met Al at a 24-hour race in Ottawa. Same race I'm going to, a different place. And he won that race. I think he did 150 miles. It was in 1982, I believe. And then we went to a hot tub together afterwards and hung out and became good friends. And then when he came down to run our races here, you know, he was running the 1,300-mile race, which was a tough race, and Sri-Chinmoy had set a limit of 18 days. And the first year, nobody could reach it, and people were saying, asking him, "Oh, could you make it one day more?" You know, and Sri-Chinmoy said, "No, somebody will do it." You know, and then the next year, Al, I happened to be his handler, part-time because he didn't need much help, but I would go after work and help him like for the rest of the night. And he would stay at my place before and after the race. And he finished. He finished, not only did he finish, like I forget what the time was, but it was well under 18 days. Two other guys finished right, you know, after him, just close to 18 days, but 17 something. And I think his was low 17 something. And you know, he was just a very kind of easygoing guy, and I didn't know him that well in his personal life. I know he had some personal problems, and his wife of that time was Canadian, and they lived up in Western Canada, and she was very nice too. She wasn't at that race. She came, I think, the year later, and I got to know her too, and so I think that was, yeah, it was probably 1981 or 82. Yeah, it was.
What did you notice about his running or his mindset that that really made him a good runner?
Well, outwardly he seemed pretty calm. You know, he didn't get that demanding or nervous. You know, I mean, I'm sure there was some stress inside him, but I didn't know him that well, but it seemed to me that he was just a naturally kind of spiritual person in his own way. He was very accepting of other runners, and he wasn't too critical of people. You know, he didn't talk a lot, you know, about anything that wasn't too meaningful, you know, like gossip and stuff like that. And he was easy to take care of. He didn't complain about pain too much. You know, I would massage his feet most of the time, but of course years later he started getting injuries in his hip and stuff. But that was during the Ward Island days. This was still, these races were still in Flushing Meadow Park until 1990. So that's where I got to know him the best. And then in Ward's Island, during the 90s, we went to Ward's Island for 10 years or so. And he did a few of those races, but that's where he started having problems.
Yeah, it's after his diabetes.
Yeah,
right.
Diabetes, and then he had a hip problem or something. And then he stopped coming to New York, you know, so I didn't see him that much, and I really never got out there to see him. I really wish I had visited him, like at the nursing home or wherever he was staying. But it was hard for me to get out there, but I sent him messages a few times. There were some friends that live out in Vancouver that got to see him. He went to some of our races out there. And I forget when he stopped running, but I really regret that I didn't get to visit him when he wasn't feeling well. But he's a great guy.
What was he like as a house guest?
One time, I think it was after that race, I forget which race, he was like really sick and he was like throwing up. And it was like, I was taking care of him it was just like one night, you know, I think he was dehydrated or something, you know. And he felt really kind of bad about it. And I said, don't worry about it. You know, it's like, But he was easygoing. To me, he was an easygoing person. You know, I didn't live with him. I wasn't married to him, so you know, who knows what he was like to other people. But we really, as a matter of fact, one thing that really touched me when we were in the 1,000-mile race in Flushing Meadow. He was in the 1,300, I think, or maybe it was 1,000. I forget. But he finished his race, and I was still running the 1,000. It was in 1991. And he was waiting for me to finish, and I was struggling really bad on the last night. I couldn't go to bed. I couldn't sleep because I had to limp all the way through the night because I had some swollen Achilles. But I was going to finish if I just kept moving. And he felt bad. He was encouraging me, you know. And then when I came across the finish line, about 2 hours before the end of the race, I was limping across, and he was holding the tape, and I finished, and he was tears in his eyes, and he hugged me, and he was like really inspired by, you know, I didn't win the race. I was one of the last ones, but the fact that I struggled through in my first multi-day, you know, so he had that sense of oneness and this feeling of, you know, friendship. You know, he was a good friend.
Did he have any kind of relationship with Sri-Chinmoy at all? Did that happen with runners? Or?
He respected Sri-Chinmoy. You know, the thing is, we don't proselytize. We don't ask people to follow our path. We just try to offer public events for the sake of inspiring people. If people want to know more about Sri-Chinmoy, they come to our meditation classes, which are free, or read his books. So he never, you know, he had a few of Sri-Chinmoy's books. He never really showed an interest in our kind of meditation, but he had a real respect for.
But did Sri interact with the runners at all?
Yeah, he went to the race quite a bit. He went to the races, and he had a little screen house there, and he would either walk around the course, or sometimes in later years he had a little electric cart. He would go around the course, and he would give them food, you know, a little prasad, they call it, like blessed food. He loved seeing the runners, and he talked to some of them. If they wanted to talk to him, we'd talk with them. I don't know if you know Ray Krolowitz. He's a very famous. You got to interview him. He's like one of the best. He was one of the best American. He's run like 250 ultras, and he's had American. You know, he's won some really big events. You know, especially 100-milers, some multi-days. Now he's a little younger than me. He's in his 60s, and he goes really slow. He does a lot of walking and some running. But he's still doing multi-days. He did the TGNY 100-miler just recently.
With Trishul.
He lives in South Carolina, but he's run a lot of races up here. And so Ray was in one of our 6-day races, I think, and in Flushing Meadow Park. And he's not a follower of Sri-Chinmoy, but he respects him, you know. And so Ray wanted to talk to Sri-Chinmoy about his running, you know, because Ray was a really, really great ultra runner, multi-day and other ultras. But he wanted to, I think he really wanted to run the 3,100. But I think he also, Sri-Chinmoy encouraged him. I don't know if Ray was afraid to do it because he was getting older and out of shape. But so Sri-Chinmoy passed away in 2007. So it was maybe 2005 or something around there. He was talking to Sri-Chinmoy, and he really wanted to ask him some personal questions. And
what do you remember?
And Sri-Chinmoy, I think one of the things he said, well, you'll have to ask Ray, was that, you know, Sri-Chinmoy told him, well, you always like to be out front. You always want to win the race. He'd go out hard in every race, and sometimes he'd die. He says, but in the 3,100, you just have to go and finish, and don't worry about the other people, who's in front. You know, that kind of thing. It was something like that. Ray told me just recently about it, and it was really touching because Ray really got a lot from that advice. You know, like, don't treat it as a race where you're competing with other people, but treat it as for me also, it was like a personal adventure, a personal exploration. And so Ray tried it. He did it, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years ago he tried it. It was before this one in the video, in the film. I wasn't here. I was on the peace run where we run around the United States with a torch and we go to visit schools and stuff.
That visited Al Howie.
Yeah, they did that in Canada.
I have pictures of it.
I wasn't there, yeah, unfortunately. But anyway, so I miss this race every other year because I'm out running around the United States and Canada. But in this particular year, Ray was doing it, and I was watching it on the, on the internet. And he was out of shape. He was going too slow, and he loves to talk with people. He's very, very personable, and he has a lot of friends in the running community and elsewhere. So he just did I don't know, maybe 2,000 miles or something, which is still a lot, but he did a lot of walking. He was on his phone a lot, I heard, and he was a little overweight. But he was happy to be in the race, and I saw him at the TGNY. I walked with him a little bit because I was helping out at one of the aid stations. And in his heart, he still wants to do it, but he'd have to do a lot of work to get ready for that race. Even though he was a great ultra runner, he's getting older and he's not really in that shape. You have to. I mean, I would love to do this one too, the 3100 again. But personally, especially this year, I had some physical, some health problems. So I'm just struggling to get. I did a marathon. It took me over 4 hours. For me, that's a lot. But I was happy to do it, but that was enough for me, So you got to do 2 marathons a day, over 2 marathons a day. So realistically, I wouldn't do this race, because I know I wouldn't finish unless by some miracle I can get back into really good shape. But I think, I don't know if it's age or just lack of confidence, but because I don't have any major injuries. But unless I had a good program to get healthy, really healthy physically all over.
Do you remember first seeing Emile at races here?
I remember Emile as being, was he French?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a tough kind of Frenchman. He used to tell stories about going to Africa and being in the forest and all these mosquitoes would come and he'd be sleeping there. And, he seemed like a really kind of daring, kind of tough guy. And I was almost afraid of him. He was actually I think he was in the race. He started the race that I did in 1991, the 1,000 mile. I think he ran that. But some of the races that I've seen him in, I was just helping that, So I don't think I've raced against him that much. But he seemed like a really kind of like tough guy. I'm not sure. I didn't get to know him that well, but he was nice to me. I don't know what he's like now. He's getting old, I guess. We're all getting old.
Do you remember Bob Wise?
Oh yeah, Bob, walking a lot. Is he still alive?
I don't know.
Yeah. Bob used to walk in our races. I think before I knew him, he was probably maybe a good runner. He was getting a little older. I know he's a little older than me, but yeah, I remember a lot of runners that were in our races. If you mention names, Dan Coffey. Did you ever hear of him? He was a little British guy who was really good.
It sounds like a little bit like Peter Hobson. I read about him.
Peter Hobson, that sounds familiar too.
The alien warrior.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he ran in the 92 Trans Am too.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Dan Coffey tried that.
And Yves Pole, that ran backwards.
Who?
Yves.
Oh, why? Oh my God, I remember him. He did one of our races backwards, I think, a marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, is he still alive?
He is, but he's in bad shape.
Really?
He fell off a roof, and I think he's paralyzed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, that goes way back. Yeah.
And Tom McGrath ran some of your races. Yeah.
Yeah. He still has a restaurant in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw him last year somewhere. I think it was at the New York Roadrunners had a Hall of Fame induction, and Alison Rowe was inducted. She was a great marathoner from New Zealand. She won the New York City Marathon in 1981 or something like that. And she came over with her son and some people. And she came to the 3,100 mile race, the documentary. And she's good friends with some of our runners. The girl Harito who's running this race is very close to her. She's from New Zealand also.
Yiannis Kouros, you remember him running races here?
Oh yeah, I was his handler in one race a few years ago, but he's given me some advice in the old days. Yeah, I used to massage him a little bit, and then I don't think I ever raced against him, seriously. But recently, when he started coming back from when he was in his 50s, I think he's what, 61 or 62 now? Yeah, so it was about 4 years ago. He came up to Ottawa to run the 24-hour race, the one I'm going up to next. And I couldn't run it that year for some reason. So I was his handler for 24 hours, and that was intense. Because he wasn't in like top shape, but he was going just for age record type stuff. So he was pushing himself quite a bit.
How was
And
it intense?
he ended up doing about 200 kilometers, which isn't too bad, but he's done a lot more. He's done 300 kilometers.
Right.
And it was indoor. It was around the track. Back then they had it indoor in this big tent, this big bubble thing, athletic bubble.
How was it intense, the handling experience?
Well, he's very demanding, and you're on a quarter-mile track, so you see him like every, it's not like a mile track where you see him every mile. So, you got to be on your alert, like basically every minute, because it only takes a couple minutes to come around. And then, he wants this, he wants that, and some of the things. It was funny because he brought a lot of Greek sweets, and he was drinking a lot of Coke, and I was trying to ask him to take healthier food, I mean, in general, he wanted what he wanted, and he had some powders and things. But then he got sick to his stomach, and then he started listening to me. He's like, maybe I won't drink as much Coke or something like that, And then when you're indoors, it's also very dry, so you can get dehydrated without knowing it. So people have to drink more water. But back then, they had the race in September, and they weren't really good. It wasn't good weather in Ottawa in September. It get rainy and cold. So they put it indoors for a few years, and then people started complaining. So now it's outdoors in July, and it's on a 2-kilometer loop with a lot of trees and stuff. It's very nice. But, Yiannis, and then we took him, then after the race he felt good. We had him stay at one of our places there. A friend of mine has an apartment, and we took him to eat, and he was really happy, just to be with us, because he hadn't done one of our races in a long time.
Lastly, let me ask you a question that it might not be very easy to answer. But why do you think that people need to or not need to remember people like Kouros or Howie or Ted Corbitt? These people that were doing all this back when there was no Twitter, there were no hashtags or social media. You couldn't really have a full-time job and do that stuff.
It's funny because I don't use a lot of social media, even though I grew up. I didn't grow up with it, but later in life it came to my life. I use a cell phone and computer a little bit, but I like being out and with people in the real world. So I don't know how it's being used on Twitter. I don't even use Facebook, and I have nothing against it. But for me, knowing the people personally or just their achievements, I know from my own experience that they worked very hard or aspired for something. They were trying to transcend themselves in some way, and it could be for ego, it could be for whatever, but they did it. I'm not judging how spiritual they were or what kind of personality they are. Some of them are harder to get along with than others, but instead of judging them, you look at their good qualities, and as far as runners go, and a lot of it, some of them, it wasn't just about running, it was just about becoming a better person, and for them it was through running. I don't personally, I love to encourage running, but I myself, was a gymnast. I did triathlons, I love swimming, I love biking. I don't do it as much as I used to. And so for me, if a person wants to run, I'll talk to them about running. But if they don't like it or they can't do it, there's a lot of other things in life you could do, besides running. But if a person's not a runner, like when you go to this race here, most of the people who are there helping or watching are not ultra runners, and some of them don't even run, but they get inspired by seeing these people because it's like they see a person aspiring in the way they could, like as a runner trying to transcend themselves. This is a little extreme. It could be a marathon. Even we had a 2-mile race this morning. I ran the 2-mile race.
You mean it almost becomes like a metaphor in a way?
Yeah, a metaphor for life or for your own transcendence. We call it self-transcendence. And Sri-Chinmoy was an artist. He if you weren't a good runner or a tennis player or a weightlifter, he didn't force people to do what they didn't want to do, or what they didn't feel happy doing. It's basically about being happy to be on this earth and realizing what an amazing planet it is. For me, it's like, if you look at a bigger perspective of life and what you're doing and why you're doing it, you have to look at the whole universe. It's like this planet is like a jewel. It's like an amazing jewel in this dark, big universe. And we have no idea what else is out there, but we know that this earth is the special place. And we're like the most evolved form of life at this point. And we should be totally happy and elated that we're aware of this, And but most human beings are worried and sad and mad, and because we get hung up in the little things in life that affect our mind and our psyche. You have to go beyond that and see what else is there, even on a physical level. I mean, our body is a miracle. All these things that are happening, we have no idea, but it was created. You could say, I don't believe in God or a creator, but something created what we are. And so if you don't think about it, because it's too much to fathom, even for scientists, you use what Sri-Chinmoy did, he developed his meditation so powerfully that you become aware of kind of the higher, subtle realities of our source. Now you can call source God or this or that, but whatever sort, there is a source of this reality, and we're a part of it. And so, according to Eastern philosophy, we come from a source and we want to go back to the source. And that's like the whole game of evolution. And so, in order to go back, you have to become more conscious of it. And so, to become more conscious, we meditate, because the mind just cannot understand.